introducing you to two exciting products. The first is the Schneider Electric Connect XW Pro inverter, and the second is the PYLONTECH lithium-ion battery, the US3000C series. Very new upgrades and very exciting features in both of them. My name is Onwa Iyang. I'm the CMO at JUSTSTANDOUT, and I'll be your host today. My colleague Solomon Babawale is going to be your moderator. We have three interesting speakers today that are going to be speaking to us about PYLONTECH and Schneider Electric. And the first speaker is Francisco Lopez. He's the VP of EMEA in Schneider Electric Solar Business. The second is Joseph Iyang. He's the Chief Technical Officer at JUSTSTANDOUT. And the third is Babajide Ogunlesi. He is the Sales Application Engineer at Schneider Electric Solar Business. Pardon me. A few housekeeping rules. We'll take everybody's questions at the end of the presentation. So if you have a question you would like to ask, please write it down in the chat and then Solomon will read it out at the end. We've dedicated 20 whole minutes to Q&A so that everyone can have the chance to speak their mind and say if they have any pain points or challenges. The main essence of our webinar today is for you to understand the new features and upgrades and how it can help you in either your present, any present project you have or in an upcoming project. So we're available to hold your hand along the way. If you've used the XW Plus before, you'll be excited about the new features in the XW Pro. And if you've used the US3000 before, you'll be even more excited about the new features that the US3000 holds. So without further ado, I'd like to hand you over to Francisco Lopez.
Hello, thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Joseph, for inviting me to this webinar. It is really a pleasure to be here with all of you. And I really appreciate this opportunity that you offer to me to introduce our new products. I really agree that it is really an exciting moment because we are right now introducing a product that will really create a new and the next level, as you are naming this webinar. So I will try to be quick in my introduction. I think this is the moment for the experts to talk. But I just wanted to mention that from Schneider Electric, we are really focusing on these new timings that are coming. We are facing really strong challenges ahead of us. Global climate. We need to give the opportunity to everyone to have access to energy. We need to be sure that energy is used in an efficient way, and we really need to allow people to have energy with the quality required. For all this is a very good moment to introduce not just the technology, but also our good partners that like JUSTSTANDOUT in Nigeria are doing fantastic work, and it is really a pleasure to see all the installations that you are managing on ground. I think we are, as I was mentioning, we are at a moment where we all need to be collaborating in this climate change that we have ahead of us. For that, we have ahead of us important task to achieve. From our side, we are investing in technology. So we are committed to invest every year from our revenues, huge part of it to develop new technologies that will be working and will be supporting all the efforts that we are doing on this effort for changing the climate problem that we have. I think batteries, it is something that will be really key for success this effort. I think it's also important to understand that in this effort, we need to play together, all of us. So for us, our commitment with renewable technology, it is really paramount. We had yesterday our CEO talking about about the efforts we are doing. We are committed to be zero carbon emitter. We are committed to be carbon neutral in the next 3 years. So we are having a really strong effort on our side, and we also want to support our partners in doing this. So we want not just us, but also our partners to become carbon neutral fast. So, and here collaborating with JUSTSTANDOUT, it is really a pleasure because we share the same DNA. So I am really pleased to announce that we have this XW Pro that allows not just to connect with batteries, but doing it in a very efficient way. It allows us to increase our connected solutions so that we really are able to benefit for all the internet applications and all this next wave that it is coming to us. We are calling it Energy 4.0 because we are going to be benefiting from the technology, we are going to be benefiting from the batteries upgrades, and we are going to be benefiting also for all the new internet technologies that are emerging right now. So I don't want to take the time from our experts, so I will leave it here. The only thing I would like to say finally is that for the next webinar, I hope we can do it in presence, and I will be really pleased to be with all of you there so that we can shake hands and not just through remote talking. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Francisco. Thank you for that wonderful opening. You spoke about investments, Schneider making investments in renewable energy. We're very happy to hear that. And that you're going to be carbon neutral in 3 years. We share that dream with you, and we're going to achieve that together. We're glad that we have the same DNA, we think alike, and we're ready to make an impact in bridging the kilowatt divide in West Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I already heard some really amazing stuff. We're going to hear some even more amazing stuff. Next slide, please. Here we have the dream team. This dream team is a team of JUSTSTANDOUT and Schneider staff. And this picture was taken last year, just after JUSTSTANDOUT signed as the authorized sole distributors of PYLONTECH in West Africa. So we got together with Schneider and we came up with a strategy on how to approach the market. So if you have any projects that you want to work on, or if you want your hand held, or if you want to know more, this is the team. At the end of the slides, you will see each person's, or you will see the contact details on how to contact us, on how to move on to the next level in your business. So I'll introduce to you now Joseph Yang, the CTO of JUSTSTANDOUT, who's going to be talking to us about PYLONTECH. Over to you, Joseph Yang.
Thank you very much, Onwa Yang, and good morning, everybody. And thank you very much, Francisco, for that opening. Mucho gracias. As we have just said, it's about climate change. And as everybody's watching the news, President Biden has rejoined the climate change accord, taking the US, which is one of the largest as well as leading markets, into the climate change. So we hope that a lot of things are going to happen, because the larger the scale, the more benefits we are going to get from economies of scales. And that benefits us in Africa, in West Africa as a whole. So that is a very important event that just took place yesterday. So next slide, please. This is a picture that a lot of people have seen. If you've not seen it, this is a picture that shows the situation that we are, how desperate the situation, but it also shows exactly the hope and the courage. And that courage is captured in what the statement I call, "We shall overcome." This is a young lady sitting in front of an ATM and using the lights to read. This happens, as you can see from the next slide, because in Nigeria in particular, we have low power. Next slide, please. We have low power. In a population of about 180 million people, our installed capacity is just 11,000 megawatts, and that needs to increase. So we will certainly overcome this challenge. And what we believe, as we'll show you in the next chart, is that the key to overcoming the kilowatt divide is really decentralization, storage, efficiencies, and artificial intelligence. And if you remember just a little bit while ago, that was what Francisco was talking about. And Francisco, I hope that Schneider may adopt the JUSTSTANDOUT mantra one of these days, because we call it DC. It's decentralization, storage, efficiency, and artificial intelligence. And that is what Schneider is doing. That is what JUSTSTANDOUT is doing. The most important today that can help us leapfrog where we are going is storage. Some people say storage is the new oil. I came up with that, but when I went to Google, I found out people had already beat me to that phrase already. But storage is the new oil. And the best form of storage is batteries. There are other forms of storage out there, from gravity storage to compressed air, to hydro, storage and all those things. But the best today that can help leapfrog the situation is really lithium ion. And you'll see from the next chart that lithium ion battery has excellent energy density. The efficiencies are wonderful. The life cycles are very good. Yes, there are some disadvantages which are being worked out. And the battery that we are presenting to you actually has very low incidence of fire, which is a LiFePO 4. But even with that, there are technologies that are continuing to push down the disadvantages. And very soon we'll be having batteries that are 20-year life batteries in storage. That would be excellent. With that, let's go to the next chart. And the next. So just like Francisco and Owe have said, we are introducing a new set of batteries from PYLONTECH, and that battery is the C version. We're going to start off with the 3000C, and as you can see from the next chart, the differences between the C and the 3000 regular is that the depth of discharge moves from 90% to 95%. You're looking at usable capacity going from 3.197 to 3.374. The other very, very, very good advantage here is that you move from being able to stack 8 units, which is 28 kilowatt hours, to 56 kilowatt hours, which is 16 units, without having to use a hub. So it saves money, reduces the amount of time that you need to do that. And then when you take a look at the maximum that you can do with one hub, you can do 80 units as opposed to 40 units, which is 84.16 kilowatt hours. Now, if you want to go with a very large installation, you can actually achieve 1.4 megawatt hours of storage by doing that. So you're doing 400 units. Now, as we go to the next chart, you will see that with the hub, normally what happens is you can connect 5 groups. So in this case, it would be 16 pieces that you would connect in groups of 5. And then to get to the next level, which is in the next chart, you will see that you're able to achieve 400 units by using 6 different hubs. So first of all, what we are talking about, and this is where it goes back to the A in the DC. This is artificial intelligence, where your battery monitors are becoming more and more intelligent. So you have level 1 intelligence is the BMS in the battery itself. In this case, where you're doing 400 batteries, the level 2 will now be in each hub. Then you have the level 3, which will be the ultimate hub, which will be then connecting to your inverter, okay? And at this stage, as it connects to your inverter, that is where Schneider comes in to be able to communicate with your systems. So with that, I will hand over back to Onwe-Inyang.
Thank you very much, Joseph Inyang, for that. Thank you. We're really hearing some exciting new things, some interesting stuff. I can see how people are going to be going off grid now, containerized solutions, different things, how to save costs, how to become more efficient, how to do more with less. That's where we're going. So our next speaker for today is Babajide Ogunlesi. And Babajide is going to be telling us about the upgrades in the XW Pro. He will also show you the difference between the XW Plus and the XW Pro. So over to you, Babajide. I'm excited. Go ahead.
Thank you for the introduction, Mrs. Owen. Hi again, everyone. My name is Babajide Ogunlesi, and I am the Sales Application Engineer for Solar Business in Africa. So I'm here to tell you about our new XW Pro inverter. But to start off, I will start off with this side. From the advent of time, we always had the XW series. So we started off with the XW. The XW was a perfect sine wave inverter, perfect when it comes to reliability, very fast transfer time, and it did single phase and 3-phase systems. Then we move into 2014. From 2014, we had the XW Plus. So for the XW Plus over here, it supported larger system installations. It could go up to 9 units for multi-cluster approaches. Also supported AC coupling. Some people on the call might be familiar with DC coupling. DC coupling is simply where you have your MPPT or your PWM, your solar charge controller, connected to your battery-based inverter to help you charge your batteries primarily. So and then AC coupling is where you have your string inverter. You might not be so familiar with it because it's not typically used in Nigeria, but we have a bunch of other webinars that tell you more about AC coupling. So be sure to tune in when we have those kind of webinars. But for the XW Plus, it supported AC coupling for systems. Then in comes the XW Pro, which came out not too long ago in 2019. The XW Pro basically does everything that the other units can do, but with some key advantages here. It has, I'll say, 2 to 3 key advantages, which you can really take note of. The first one is when we talk about active grid code conformity. You might be aware of the changing grid codes in the regions in parts of the world today. You might be aware of California Rule 21, some Hawaiian grid codes, New Zealand grid codes, South African grid codes are soon to come out. It basically says that when a smart inverter is connected to the grid, or if you want to connect any inverter to the grid, it has to be able to perform in certain ways when the grid tells it to perform in those certain ways. So your typical inverters that are not so smart, I would say, would not be able to conform to this grid codes. So you have to have a smart inverter capable of doing that. And this is one of the key reasons why the XW Pro was made. Then we move into I would say, into smart battery conformity. We can talk about closed loop compatibility here, and we can also talk about state of charge control for your battery system. So you're going to see that in the next couple slides. So this basically mentions what I was talking about before, as for the XW Pro, advantages it has over the XW and then the XW Plus. But just to go over it a little bit, for the lithium-ion battery compatibility, you can use state of charge instead of voltage in terms of controlling your system or measuring your output power to your loads, communication through the BMS of the battery, and in this case, like a PYLONTECH battery, which is what you're going to see in the closed loop compatibility. When there's no BMS with this lithium-ion battery, you can use our battery monitor to perform state of charge controls, which you previously could not do. AC coupling improvements, because here you're going to be using state of charge for the transitioning from your bulk absorption, for your frequency shifting, and it is a much better method to control your state of charge, to your shifting, your battery shifting instead of voltages. Then self-consumption. There's actually a dedicated slide for this part for self-consumption using export limiting capabilities, and you get to know about that in a bit. Now, the key characteristics of the XW Pro. It just like, again, just like your regular XW Plus 8548, continuous output power is 6.8 kilowatts. The peak it can give you for 30 minutes is 8.5 kilowatts, and then for 60 seconds is actually a 75% increase of the regular output power, which is 12 kilowatts. You can sell power back to the grid if possible. You have the IEC version over here, which is 230 volts. And then another key aspect I'll bring you here. So if you are familiar with the XW Plus, with the XW, you typically know that you can use a system control panel to do the configuration, to do the monitoring and all of that with your system. In the case of the XW Pro, take note, it is solely the Connect gateway. That's how it was made for you to do the commissioning and configuration of the system, also your monitoring, because of the added features you can do on the XW Pro as compared to the other inverters. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Talking about the closed loop compatibility with the lithium-ion batteries. Let me move this out of the way. So yeah, so to start with, I'll explain what open loop is. Everybody understood open loop, it's just that they might not really have known the term open loop. So open loop is typically when you connect your batteries to your inverters, then you match the specs of the battery to your inverter, where you go to your inverter, set your bulk, absorption, float voltages, your charging current, your discharge current, all of those individual settings. Those are typically referred to as open loop settings. This is typically what you do for your lead acid batteries, like your flooded, your gel, your AGM, or even your lithium-ion batteries that typically do not have any BMS connected to it. So you typically use open loop settings in this kind of scenario. So in open loop settings, you might not be able to enjoy the full extent of the batteries because, as you know, as different transitions happen for the battery, it varies with time. Sometimes the temperature can rise in the ambient temperature can rise, which would typically reduce your performance of the battery. Sometimes your battery might even want you to give it more current to charge. You can say that, okay, at this point, you can use more out of me, so the discharge current can even increase. But because the battery is not communicating with your inverter, you do not have this sort of leisure. So those settings you typically input on the inverter itself, they're more conservative values because you want to try and be within the good limits all the time. You might not be able to use the full extent of the batteries. And again, this is actually very good. It's not like it's horrible, you should never do it. This is what we're all used to. And you can see some battery examples for lithium ion that don't even have their own BMS that we can communicate with like this. Then in comes the closed loop compatibility. So if you take note of the pictures that I showed you over here, let me go back to this previous one. You see that the BMS for this battery is not communicating with the inverter. Now we move to closed loop compatibility. To start off with, you see that the BMS is connected to the inverter. It's no longer just your positive and negative lines from your inverter to your battery. You have your communication line also. In sometimes our inverter speaks ZAN bus, this is why you're seeing ZAN bus here, but there are also different communication lines for BMS of batteries like Modbus or CAN bus. So in this case of PYLONTECH, we communicate with it using CAN bus. Then you ask yourself this question: if our inverters speak ZAN bus, how can you communicate with another language? It's like saying Yoruba and Igbo communicating together. There's going to be a clash. You need a sort of interpreter to give you this full understanding or to make sure everything is clear in the system. This is where the connect gateway comes into play. On our edge control devices in Schneider for our solar aspects, we have the gateway, we have Insight Facility, we have Insight Cloud. So any of these edge control devices, you're going to be able to use it as the interpreter in this aspect. So here, the BMS of the PYLONTECH battery CAN bus connects to the gateway because the gateway also speaks CAN bus, Modbus, ZAN bus. So you connect it to it, and then at the same time, the ZAN bus from the battery also connects to the gateway to perform this closed loop integration. So things like state of charge, voltage, temperature, everything that the battery monitor, the BMS of the battery feels and tells the inverter that, okay, this is how I want you to operate. It does it perfectly well. Even another key advantage of closed loop communication is that it saves some time on your configuration of your system if you're doing an initial commissioning. Because when it comes to voltages, when it comes to charging, when it comes to all of these certain features that you have to input directly, the BMS actively speaks that to the inverter, so you do not have to bother about that aspect. Okay, so that's a key integration here. And then the real benefit of you having closed loop communication is that you're able to utilize the full extent of the batteries. In the case of open loop, it is solely the BMS of the battery, if the battery even has a BMS, that handles the safety of the battery, proper utilization. Like if there's a breaker on the battery, it can trip if you're overcharging it, if you're over discharging it. And then in the case of closed loop communication, because of this communication line connected, you have both the BMS of the battery and the inverter itself properly managing the battery in terms of safety and also for full utilization of the battery. So basically everything I said written out here, but I just wanted to explain it so that everybody could get the full extent and full knowledge of what I was talking about. Now, for the state of charge control, for example, if you don't have the BMS of the battery giving the inverter that state of charge control, like I mentioned before, you can still make use of a battery monitor. With the battery monitor, you're still able to do the state of charge controls with the XW Pro, I would add. So if you have a look at this graph at the bottom here, it speaks volumes. You know that phrase that a picture speaks 1,000 words? This picture speaks volume. So you can, if you have time, you can read what I'm talking about here, but rather just listen to what I'm going to say at this aspect. So for a lead acid battery, if you've played around with it a couple times, you see that the voltages of lead acid batteries vary a lot. Let's say you have a 48-volt battery system. When the battery is charging, it can go as high as 57 volts. When it goes pretty low, it can go as low as 44 volts. So you have a pretty steep slope for the usage of that volt or for the usage of that battery in terms of voltages. For example, here we're seeing 80% when the battery is 80% full, and when it drops to 40%, you can see that there's a 6 voltage variation. There's a variation of 6 volts over here. In the case of a lithium ion battery, your slope is virtually horizontal. You might not have this sort of full visibility to really play around with it. So you have about a 0.5 volt variation. This would be confusing for anybody to really understand because as the technical people are even trying to wrap their heads around the voltage variation for lead acid batteries. They haven't fully understood that yet. And then you now come to lithium ion where you have a very narrow, a very small slope, a very small steep of the voltage variation. So it would be confusing for the technical person or for anybody basically, and also be confusing for the inverter. So where you have variations, how do you know when you're supposed to transition from bulk to absorption to float? Those kinds of things can mess with the inverter, which is the aspect I was talking about for state of charge control when it comes to AC coupling. It could make it pretty buggy to use AC coupled systems with lithium ion batteries if you're not careful. But when you're using state of charge control gives you the full extent. At this point, I'm 100%, 90%, 80%, regardless of what the voltage is giving me. The battery monitor, the BMS of the battery is able to send this information to the inverter and uses state of charge for its controls instead of just the voltage only. So this is a key advantage with the XW Pro now. Now, for the aspects I was talking about for self-consumption using the XW Pro. So traditionally, if you have your DC system, or if you're aware of this, you have your DC coupled system, I would say. You have your inverter and your charge controller. In some aspects, like with our inverters, you find out that you can use a setting called enhanced grid support. Now, enhanced grid support is where you have your DC coupled system. The panels are connected to your charge controller. It goes to help you charge your batteries. Then if your battery bank is full and you're still able to generate solar power, the excess power goes to the loads instead of you consuming from the utility. So even if you have NEPA, even if there's electricity from your utility supply, you're able to use this excess solar energy to your loads instead of even pulling power from the utility. So you maximize solar and reduce your consumption from the utility. And in turn, you reduce the amount of money you pay back to your utility. So this is a function with the XW Plus. Now, let's go to the added benefits you can accomplish with the XW Pro inverter. Now, for the XW Pro inverter, look at it this way. You have your inverter supplying power to your backed up loads. Same sequence of your enhanced grid support. Excess solar power after charging your batteries goes to your critical loads and you consume from solar instead of consuming from NEPA or your utility supply, even if there's utility present. And then we haven't just even kept it there. We've taken it to the next level. On this same AC line, on the same utility line that is supplying your inverter, if you have excess solar power that, first of all, it fully charges your batteries or charges your battery to a set point, it fully meets the demand of your critical loads, and excess solar power is still being generated. The excess solar power would also go back through the inverter to your main utility line, to your main DB, your main distribution board in your house, and also supply solar power to your non-critical loads, your loads that are not backed up by the inverter. This is a key improvement for inverters because not only would you have solar power supplying your critical loads, you would have solar power supplying your non-critical loads too, while maintaining self-consumption rules. So self-consumption is basically saying that you're not selling this excess solar power back to the utility, because in some regions, you are not allowed to sell excess power to the utility. You have to limit it. So as you do this, so with this self-consumption application with XW Pro, you have some additional devices you connect to the system with it. You're able to accomplish this self-consumption application for your full loads, critical and non-critical loads, while still maintaining self-consumption applications or self-consumption rules, sorry. And I hope that made sense. And right now I would hand it back to Owen to continue this presentation. Thank you.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you, Babajide, for that fantastic presentation. Those upgrades. There are inverters, and then there are inverters. That's all I can say. Thank you very much. So I'm sure we're all communicating now. We're communicating with you, telling you the features. I'm sure you're looking or you're thinking in your mind, what sector can this help me with? The education sector, the healthcare sector, the agribusiness, different sectors. The next few slides going to be taken by Joseph Yang will show you real life examples of how this has worked in Nigeria. There are also instances where we've done some installations or supported our clients with installations outside Nigeria in the West African region. But for privacy reasons, we're not going to be showing that. But just to let you know that we can support you across West Africa. So over to you, Joseph Eyang.
Hello, thank you very much again, Onwe Eyang, for the reintroduction. And thanks everybody. I hope you're having a good time learning more about the new combination. Just to reiterate, what Babajide just finished talking about is something that is very, very, very important. Where now with the XW Pro, you are able to make sure that all the power that your solar panels produces, you can use it. Not only can you use it on your critical load, but with an addition of a watt node meter, you can actually use that load. You can use that excess solar power on your main panels. So that would further reduce the amount of money that you're paying to the eco distribution or the power holding company that is in your area across West Africa and across Africa. So that is really important. So with that, let's take a look at some live examples here. This is a test center in Australia. And as you can see, PYLONTECH is holding well its state of health, and that is its capacity through time. As you can see, what is happening is that on the purple line, you are looking at the capacity holding for quite a long while. And this is really, really, really good. Now, let's take a look at the next chart. This is an example at a hospice in Lagos. This was 2019, and it's called Hearts of Gold. For those in Lagos, it's in Surulere. You can go there and take a look at the Schneider equipment. It's actually an SW, not an XW, but this gives you an example of the Schneider and PYLONTECH in work. And while you're there, you can donate also to the cause. Next slide. This is a residential unit with an XW, and it's 21 kilowatt battery storage in Eckerts, and this was 2000. Next slide, please. Take a very good look at this slide. We have about 32 lead acid batteries in here. And one of the things that Babajide was talking about when it comes to lead acid batteries, you will find out that with lead acid batteries, you have that voltage drop when the battery is full versus when the battery is going to be at the point of cutout, 6 volts, which means that you normally have to get a larger battery bank if you want to carry a load from the beginning to the end. While with lithium ion, you do not really need a lot of battery because the voltage would be practically the same when it's full and when it's almost ready to cut out. You have 32 batteries here. Take a look at it properly. Now let's go to the next slide. This is just 12 units of lithium ion battery. This more than replaces those batteries that you see there. Let's go back to the slide just to show people again, just in case. Yeah, this is 32 batteries. Then let's go back to the new one. This is 12 batteries. This will more than replace that. Also, the amount of time to charge is cut down by almost 1/3. Your space is reduced. You can install the battery bank at any level of a building without worrying whether the building is going to come crashing down because of the weight of the battery. So lithium ion has a ton of advantages. And this installation is in a clinic here in Lagos. And it's been working since 2019. And as I speak, up till today, they have not connected the grid. They are just working with the panels and the battery bank and Schneider. Okay, so let's go to the next slide, please. This is a larger system. It's 85.3 kilowatt hours battery storage. We have 51 kilowatts of Schneider Connex equipment in here. This is a place where the people in the hospital had to fetch water in order to flush their toilets, in order to do anything. They were using just small battery lights to do medical procedures. This has changed Poly General Hospital in Enugu. We are proud that we were part of this project. We are proud that Schneider was part of this project. And for us, lithium ion is really something that is going to change and help Nigeria leapfrog. Going back to that chart that we showed you, the kilowatt divide, we believe that lithium ion is going to be it. For most of the people who do not understand, part of what has helped telecommunications in Nigeria and across the world improve is the lithium ion in your cell phones. All the cell phones you're using today really have lithium ion in them. If you remember a long time ago, you had to carry 2 batteries or 3 batteries in your pockets, and you have to have a desktop charger to charge your phones. That has gone. Why? Because of lithium ion. And we believe that the price will continue to reduce, even though the FX continues to affect Nigeria and some other countries in Africa. But we believe that the prices will continue to reduce, and it will be something that you can present to your clients. The next slide, please. This is an installation in China, which shows you that we could go to the megawatts storage levels up to 4 megawatts per double containers and more. And just to share with you some exciting news, which we'll be having a webinar in the future, Schneider is going to be coming out, or has actually, they have it, but it's going to be coming to us, where we have inverters that can operate at 400 to 500 volts DC. With that, we can use the high voltage lithium ion batteries from PYLONTECH. And we, as a company, will be able to help people provide containerized solutions with Schneider equipment. So if you have large projects, companies, manufacturing, talk to us and we'll be able to help you. Finally, I would like to say that we are willing to work with you to share the knowledge that we have. One of the other things that has happened in the Nigerian environment is that electricity bills have gone up about 100% recently, which means that renewable energy is more attractive. So if you have some situations or some clients that you need to walk through, talk to us. We will be able to sit down with you and work the financials so that you could do a 5-year payout and tell the client, this is what will happen if you get a Schneider Pro that can do certain things for you. It can help you reduce the amount you're going to pay to NEPA, because guess what? All that your solar panel produces, you will be able to consume. It will not go to waste, unlike with any other inverter that you have out there. It also tells the person that here is a battery that is going to last 10 years as opposed to 2-3 years. Here is a battery that at the beginning, when it's fully charged, will be able to carry the load as to when it's empty. It will be able to carry the same load. And those are the advantages. I call the Schneider Connex Pro and the lithium-ion battery PYLONTECH a killer combination. It's going to help us leapfrog where we are today. With that, I will hand over to Owen Iyang.
Thank you very much, Joseph Iyang, for that insightful presentation. Did you remember to mention that for the containerized solutions, for example, if you have clients that have 70 stations or 70 locations that they want to deploy, we can build those containerized solutions at our workshop and then deploy straight from there. So that saves you time, it saves you money, it saves you a lot of funds, and you can just deploy straight from our workshops to the different locations, whether in Nigeria or outside of Nigeria within West Africa. So with that, I say thank you to everybody, but first of all, I'd like to hand over to Francisco Lopez to give us some closing remarks before the questions and answers.
Thank you, Owen. It's really a pleasure. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Babajid. It's been really a pleasure being part of this event. And it is really great to see the passion. We are talking about all these new products, because at the end of the day, we are talking about a goal that we all share, which is closing the gap in the kilowatt bridge. And it is about supporting the whole planet in this carbon neutrality. So I mentioned our commitment within Schneider Electric before. As I was mentioning, and I would like everyone to be part of this, because we are partners in this race. So we have this commitment to accelerate the rate in carbon neutrality. We have agreed to do it 10 years earlier than the forecasted trajectory, that is in 2014, and we have a path for doing that. So we want to achieve carbon neutrality by 2025 with allowing offsets in our operations, and then getting to net zero CO2 emissions by 2030 with no offsets. So we would be growing in this idea, and we want to do it with partners, and we want to do it with JUSTSTANDOUT, because here we have something that it is fantastic, which is we have really a strong partnership working with Joseph, having our calls on technology, about new features, about new products. It is something that it is really a pleasure. And again, as I mentioned, I would be really glad to be doing the next event together with all of you in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francisco. Thank you again. We'll be looking forward to a COVID-free time where we can all meet together in a place and actually shake hands and have our meetings and talk about our passions. That's the XW Pro, the Schneider inverters, and the PYLONTECH lithium-ion batteries. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Solomon Babawale, who's going to be taking the question and answer session. If you have any questions, please feel free to speak now. If you have any concerns, let us know. One of the reasons why we're having this webinar is because of your feedback. The feedback you gave us, we gave it to the manufacturers and they've upgraded the products. So please feel free to ask questions. And if you have any projects you want us to help you on in whatever region in Africa, West Africa, do let us know also. Thank you. Questions, please.
Thank you, Mrs. Owen. We have one question from the chat platform, and it's from Kenneth, and I think it's directed to Mr. Babajide. He's asking what are the advantages of AC coupling systems?
Okay, thanks for the question. So for AC coupling, some of the advantages are in terms of efficiency. If you're familiar with some laws back from what they taught us in secondary school, you see that energy converted from one stage to the other is never really 100%. So for example, let's say you have a commercial building. This is also set into the application you want to use this in. You see that for loads that you have in the daytime when the sun is out, it will be less, there'll be less losses in terms of conversion when you're converting from one state to another when you are doing it during the daytime. So to give you a practical example, you have loads in the daytime, it is going to be from your PV inverter. Solar is going to be converted from your panels directly into AC from your string inverter, and it goes directly to your loads, as compared to if you have a DC coupled solution. So for DC coupled solution, you find out that the solar is going to be converted from DC back to DC to help you charge your batteries. Then from your batteries, it's going to be converted again from that chemical energy to electrical energy before it goes through your inverter from DC electrical energy to AC electrical energy to your load. So you see that there are multiple stages of conversion here, which would lead to a lower utilization of the energy harvest. So for AC coupled systems, from DC to AC directly to your load. So it takes care of a lot of losses you could potentially have in the system. I hope that answers the question. Solomon, back to you.
Thank you, Babajide. There's another question here directed to Mr. Young. Is asking what the pricing per kilowatt hour for PYLONTECH batteries.
So for all the commercial questions on pricing and all, you can get in touch with us after this presentation. We'll walk you through. We're going to work with you based on your project and what you're trying to achieve, as opposed to just giving you a blanket price. In the next slide, Babajide, please, can you show the next slide? There are the, yes, the handles. If you can reach us by email or anything, and we'll talk about that. Thank you.
Okay, and I would just like to add to that. The reason we are saying you should get in touch with us is that when you are trying to work with a battery that requires a higher capex, in order to convince the client, it's always good to set out either a 5-year or a 10-year financial payback in order to make the client see what the payback is. And also set the other advantages for the solutions, just like we have spoken about. Let me give you an example. What we are doing is about solutions. So we make sure that at the end of the day, the client has not just the benefit of lithium-ion batteries, but also has the benefit of the Schneider Connects, and also has the benefits of what we call efficiencies. Remember, we talk about DC, decentralization, storage, efficiencies, and artificial intelligence. We have clients that we have spoken to and worked with. We have changed all their air conditioners from regular air conditioners to inverter air conditioners. instead of using that money to buy an extra lithium-ion battery, we use that money to change their ACs to inverter ACs. By doing that, we are able to put together a financial package that even when the accountant or the CFO sees that number, he will say, guess what? Yes, you're paying more upfront for this product, but at the end of the day, this is how much we are going to save. We've done some pipeline projects with banks. And when you take a look at it and you tell the bank that you're going to save 1 billion in about 5 years in all your branches in Nigeria, they're going to sit up and invest. So that's why we like to present it as a total package, and we are willing to work with you. Call us, sign up with us as a vendor, and we will be willing to work with you, because at the end of the day, what Francisco was talking about, we are passionate about bridging this kilowatt divide, and we are going to do it while reducing our carbon footprints. That is our mission. It's a God-given mission to us, and we will deliver it by God's grace.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Owen. Mr. Yang, sorry. To Mr. Ernest, anything concerning cost implications, please kindly contact JUSTSTANDOUT via our handles, and we would respond to you. On this note, if there is no other question, I will be handing you back to Mrs. Owen.
Thank you very much, Solomon. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. As we said at the beginning, we've kept to our word. We've kept this webinar as a 1-hour webinar. And that's what we intend to do every quarter. We'll come with updates and upgrades to you, and we will always keep it within the 1-hour range. You can still reach us on any of our handles. We're very glad that you were able to join us. And I hope that this session was very informative and eye-opening for you, and that it will really help you in your different projects, wherever they are, within Nigeria and outside Nigeria, and whatever sector that you want to implement the project in. Always remember, what we strive for is efficiency, we strive for cost reduction, and we strive for reduction in time. So instead of doing the same thing repetitively in a longer time, you do it in a shorter time with more efficient equipment. So thank you, everybody, and goodbye.